Greetings, fellow Empyreans. I am Ashtarothi, and this is the EVE Universe Show's continued coverage of the CSM 16 election with our interviews with the candidates, this time with Progodlegend. How you doing, Progod?
I am doing good, man.
Awesome. So let's go ahead and just jump into this by first explaining the rules. As always, I have 50 minutes to go over the candidacy with the candidate, and I have their forum post in front of me to be able to show you and go over with them. After I have time to explore the topics with the candidate, I will give them a 10-minute warning in which they can then make sure to go over anything that they feel I might have missed or give final presentations, what have you. And then around an hour, once we're both satisfied, it will go on over to YouTube where it goes on the playlist with all the others, so that way you can watch it and become an informed voter, because that's what this is all about. An informed electorate makes an effective CSM, which is an effective tool for us as players, but only if we make it so. So thank you all for watching these, and thank you all for participating. Let's begin, Progod, by asking you, what is your history with the CSM?
Oh, with the CSM specifically.
Right.
Well,
Have you
I was
ran
on
before?
CSM 8
Have you been?
and CSM 9, as
There you
a
go.
lot of people know. That was good. Go ahead. Yeah. So, yeah, it's I was on about 7 or 8 years ago. I did 2 terms in a row when I was kind of the head FC for an alliance called Nulli Secunda. We were null block. Sims. I felt like I was able to contribute a lot. The CSM was in a good spot for CSM 8 at least. CSM 9 had a little bit of drama, but for the most part, I felt like we did some good things. I was on the CSM when they did when they converted over to Antosa Sav, when they started doing Tiericide, and had a lot of input on both of those. And it just in general was able to get a better understanding of how CCP makes this game, how difficult it is to balance a sandbox, a true sandbox, which Eve is still probably one of the only games it is a true sandbox. So it was a good experience, and now that the only thing I would say about that I'm kind of excited about this time is uh, I was pretty much still in college when I got on the CSM, and so not too young, but definitely not as old as I am now. And I feel like being a more mature person, and just in general, but also being a more experienced Eve player, I feel like I can bring a lot more to the table this time.
So what caused you to want to put the cape back on, as it were, right? Like you did your time on the CSM, you left. Most of the time when people leave, they don't come back to the CSM necessarily. Like that's been their time. What caused you to want to run for the CSM again, want to be on it again? Now.
Yeah, I mean, I after doing those 2 terms, yeah, I definitely wanted to take a break, and have been content for the most part to let other people, do their thing. I've always had at least one buddy interest. Just usually block FC here, there, on there. But yeah, this year I kind of decided to jump in at the last second, and it was, I entered on the last day. I put my app literally 4 hours before the deadline, and I was just sitting there that week and thinking about the war we've had, and this nullsec war that we've been fighting for a year has just, it's been far and away the biggest war that's ever been fought in EVE Online, the longest war that's ever been fought in EVE Online, the best example of all the edge cases for all of these game mechanics that CCP have been introducing over the past 3 or 4 years. Some good, some bad, and I've been one of the people, not the only one, and definitely not the overall leader, but one of the people running the war for the Pappy side, and I've been in all the conversations for Pappy about strategy and what we should do, what we shouldn't do, what we can do, and what we can't do based on game mechanics. And I've got a pretty good idea of how these game mechanics lead to good content and lead to some pretty frustrating content. And we've had a year of this now, and I feel like CCP needs to hear somebody's perspective, and from the people who have led this war, preferably on both sides. Unfortunately, I didn't see any Imperium's top FCs running, so that's unfortunate. But Philly's running this year. Myself, Gobbins is also one of those Pappy leaders who's been in every conversation at the high level. I would have loved to see, an Asher or a Jay or a Mr. V or even, some of their next tier FCs like John or Marine Oscar. Any one of those guys really would have liked to see some more of their FCs run. But Merkel and Omnit and Brisk are quality CSM members, and Goons are a pretty solid organization. So I have no doubt they'll be able to stream their feedback up the chain to their CSM members. But yeah, the more people we have on the CSM this year, communicating to CCP what should be the lessons learned from this conflict and the game mechanics as they were, the better. Because it's been an interesting war. It's definitely been quite the event in EVE Online history. The note that will go down as one of the major events ever in this game. But I mean, we definitely want to build on some of the good things from this war and really uh, try to fix some of the pain points, which are numerous.
So help me out because like when you say these things like you weren't really thinking about it, you need somebody to have a voice, and you ran at the last second. It like I know that as you mentioned, Vili is also running, who is also a well-known, commander within the Pappy structure. So he's already on the CSM. Like it almost feels like you're saying that you don't feel like his voice is enough on the CSM, or you don't think that he's going to make it, and so you need to be on it instead. Like, help me understand how that relation or like how that works. Do you have a different position than him, or how?
Well,
Yeah,
I mean, Billy and I don't agree on everything. We're not exactly the same person. But no, I trust Billy's perspective. I trust his representation on the CSM. But as I said, I've been happy to let others, represent in my interest, and I felt like my demographic, quote unquote, if you can call it that,
sure.
was represented on the CSM. But this is, I would say running for CSM, you have to have a certain amount of passion for the game, and I felt like that I wanted to be involved this year. Even though there's Gobbins, there's Billy, there's Goon candidates on there. Um, I know I have some unique perspective. Billy and I don't agree on everything. Gobbins and I don't agree on everything. But even if we did, I feel passionate about this subject. I want more voices in the room. I want as many voices as possible in CCP's ear, saying that these these game mechanics need some tweaks. They need some changes. They were close, but we need to get there. This has been going on for a while now.
So one might argue that the CSM should have a variety of opinions, but it sounds to me like you think that it should have a variety of FCs. Uh, Can you argue that point? What is the value of having multiple high tier FC leaders within the CSM? Can't any one of them give competent feedback?
The CSM is a representation of the game. The people who vote are, the body politic, or all the voters are going to vote, and whoever gets the most votes going to get on. We'll get the representation we vote for. So, yeah, I am all for diverse voices, and I don't think there's going to be 10 no block candidates on there. But If there's enough votes for 3 or 4 or 5, then that's what it's going to be, and I'm okay with it. And considering the major event we've had this year, I don't think it's a bad thing to have a little bit of overrepresentation for nullsec this year. They've definitely been putting the work in, let's say.
Well, and obviously, yeah, as you mentioned earlier, this war has basically pushed every single mechanic in Eve to its absolute extreme on every single level because it has impacted every type of space. It's gone on for so long that nobody who's played Eve in the last year can actually has been completely unaffected, I would say. Um,
Yeah.
but again, so what I'm trying to do is what I'm asking is that like this is a new concept for me, right? Like I would actually say like, oh well, we got your FC. You know, we have one or two high level FCs on the CSM. That's fine. We only have 10 positions, so like we need to make sure to allocate resources towards other things. So the argument that we need to have as many of this one type of player as possible, I find very interesting. So help me understand as somebody who was on the CSM how that actually ends up being useful, or more importantly, how having only one FC on high end FC on the CSM would be insufficient.
I wouldn't say insufficient. I mean, just a real talk here, and some of you guys might not particularly like this, but I'm all for representation from every game group. I want every player to, have their experience represented on the CSM. Although there are a lot of different areas of Eve, it's a pretty diverse game. But CCP is going to take, having been on the CSM, having known people who've been on the CSM. The reality is that CCP can ignore the CSM sometimes for good and for bad reasons, and it's about volume of message. It's not about the message particularly. So the more people you have on there driving a certain message, the better you off you are, and selfishly or altruistically, depending on how you look at it, I think nullsec needs some work, and I want to add some additional voices to it. I think it's necessary.
Fair enough. And I appreciate you exploring that topic with me, uh, especially out the gate. Let's talk a little bit more about your actual what the message is. So, what are some of the major pain points that you feel are important to drive home?
Um, I think the fact that so this is something Brisk and I talked about yesterday, before Pando's show went live, and I actually didn't bring it up, but when CCP first introduced the Sinojammers, the flex structures,
Mm-hmm.
and the Sinojammer was one of them. It was at Vegas 2018, and they had a structures panel right afterwards, right after the keynote speech that was streamed. They always had those panels and town halls, whatever you want to call them, right?
Correct.
So I remember actually, I was at the Test Alliance Airbnb we had rented, um, which was a lot of fun. But we were watching a stream on the TV, and I saw those flex structures, and I was like, oh my god! And I immediately Ubered over to the hotel, and I had someone save my seat at the front of the town hall. And right before it started, I walked up there, and I spent 20 minutes of the 60 minutes, which was super selfish, almost douchey, but basically a third of that structure's town hall, explaining in detail how much of a disaster these Sinojammers would be, and how much of a difference it was from the current Sinojammer mechanics.
Mm.
So when I say that one of our major pain points is Sinojammers, I can tell you that it's not just because of the recent experience of this war. I've been saying it since before they were even in the game. They were a terrible idea. They're still a terrible idea. We have abused them just as much as goons have. We use Sinojammers to kill all of Goon's keep stars outside of the 1DQ constellation, and they are now using Sinojammers to defend their last constellation, and they have been used throughout this war. The current concept of Sinojammers is terrible. Um, they are dictating nullsec conflict to a ridiculous amount. But that's not the only one. I would say that.
Well, I want to actually, I want to jump in. I want you to
Oh, go
explore that
ahead.
one a little bit more, if you'd be willing, because help me understand this as a not somebody who hasn't actually been interested or involved in this war, I should say, interested but not involved. Um, so you're absolutely correct that Sinojammers and thus the strategic index of systems has played a role in this war on a scale that I don't believe I've seen before, and I don't think it's like a coincidence or anything like that. I think that you're right. The nature of the flex structure Sinojammer clearly basically became a defining feature about how people conceptualize nullsec combat. But is that a good thing or a bad thing? How is it a bad thing? Because this idea of like, if you can take the territory and hold it for a period of time, that death clock idea, then you can deploy this extra tool. And therefore, if they can't figure out how to get it back from you in time, now you basically, it's like a soft enrage that makes it easier for you to then advance if you can hold it that period of time, like as if you're burning the fields. That feels like it's working. Can you please help me understand how it's not?
Well, it's working because we've stuffed most of nullsec into one region. All of these things that we're doing in this war are working because we have the manpower for it, but that's not a good thing. And what I'll eventually get into is, and I told CCP this actually, because I'm in contact with a few devs regularly, so are the Goon FCs. We talk to them about nodes and things like that. And I told them at the beginning of the war, I was like, look, I'm doing the strategic playing for this war right now, and I can tell you these game mechanics encourage the worst kind of all or nothing strategic thinking that is going to constantly lead to stuffing tons and tons of people, into these battles, which would be fine if the servers can handle it, but it's kind of rough. And it's I'm not saying the servers are crashing. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about that almost every major battle in this war takes 5 to 6 hours, which is frustrating for people who are trying to live a life outside of this game. So um, to answer your question, no, I would say that the Sinojammers are working in Delve because we have a very unique situation where we have unbelievable amounts of manpower to do it. Outside of Delve, I would not say it's a good thing. The way it's important to remember how we got here. Years ago, there was a lot of easier fighting over structures. You reinforced an iHub, you fought over it. You reinforced a tower, you fought over it. Now you're talking about, okay, we've got to spend 5 weeks covering this iHub. We got to fight around the clock. We got to get these Sinojammers online. We can't let them RF it in the AUTZ because that's going to affect us in the USTZ. We better have 24/7 coverage. All of this stuff we're doing in this war does not lead to a more relaxing, casual gameplay after the war that is ultimately going to raise the barrier of entry for nullsec alliances so high that it's not a good thing. It is not a good thing to put this kind of stress on the content creators, the people who want to take risk and take chances, maybe start their own alliance, and then they realize, oh my God, all of the stuff that I have to do with Sov, it's just almost not worth it. It's fine now for the groups outside of the war, but once the war is over and all these major entities go back to their sides of the universe, it's this has happened before in Eve where a bunch of small alliances break out and then they all kind of get hoovered up. So Dane Cook, that's not what I'm saying, man. I
You,
just went over that, but so I would say that these mechanics do not encourage the kind of conflict that would be conducive to a healthy nullsec, in my opinion.
okay.
And I've thought that since before this war, actually. Been pretty
So,
adamant about it.
so I mean, you mentioned that this is one of the longest term, uh, and I mean, I would argue it's probably one of the most successful, one of the most interesting, larger scale wars in EVE Online history. So
Yeah.
the idea that the piece that's making that happen is a problem. Um, I like I think that part of the thing is that it is supposed to be hard to live in nullsec, right? Like, isn't that part of the point? You left HiSec, which took care of all of your needs, and struck it out where
It's
you
always
have to
been
build
hard to live
everything.
in nullsec, man.
Right.
It was hard to live in nullsec during POSSOV. It was hard to live in nullsec during Dominion Sov. It
Right.
was hard to live in nullsec pre-Citadel. It's still hard to live in nullsec. That doesn't mean we can't evaluate these mechanics. And I
That's
think a
fair.
lot of people would be shocked to find out the things that I do like about this current meta.
That-
One of the things I love more than anything that's going to shock people, and a lot of people don't like this, is damage caps on citadels. I think citadels in general are a good idea. When they were actually coming up, when I was on the CSM, CSM 8, CSM 9, and we were looking at getting rid of Dominion Sov, um, one of the things that I said back during Dominion Sov is the problem with the iHubs and SBUs is the way they're currently envisioned, or the way they currently work, is that once the fight starts on an iHub grid, there is actually no difference between the defending fleet and the attacking fleet. There are two fleets fighting there because there are no defensive advantages. And so part of what Citadels was start giving some defenders some advantages. There was just no reason to fight on pulse grids once they did Dominion Sov. Now there's a reason to fight on Citadels, and they give the defenders quite a lot of advantages. I think that's a good thing. I think the damage caps create this kind of tug of war mechanic that people don't kind of fully understand, but it's better than kind of the all or nothing battles, or not all or nothing battles. The either the iHub's going to die because they have the capital advantage, or the iHub's never going to die because they have the capital advantage. That was in Dominion Sov, where you just either if you were defenders and you had capitals, you just dropped slow cats on it and repped it instantly. Um, I think I like that about Citadels. So what there's a lot of things about this current meta I like, and I do agree. The fact that we've had a big war is actually a pretty good thing, and a lot of goons might find this shocking, but I think it was a great thing that they were able to defend against a larger superior force for so long. That's not particularly why I find these mechanics frustrating for content creators.
right.
A lot of it was scarcity coming in the middle of it that just needlessly created more work for all the people who are doing the hard work of actually creating the content, especially because it came with such vague and little warning sometimes about what the actual mechanics were. Um, but I'm most concerned with the actual battles and tactical side of how these conflicts go, and I don't think it's a good thing. Like what we did to kill the keep stars against goons, I don't find that engaging gameplay. I really don't. I think it's stupid that no one wants to fight on the Citadel and everyone's just competing to out jam each other. Um, I think it's kind of an ridiculous that a lot of these subcap versus capital mechanics still haven't been addressed, even though they've been talked about endlessly for 3 or 4 years. Satonia raised when he was running for CSM, he raised a lot of the issues with capitals versus subcapitals, and
Capital
they're
projection
still
against
kind of
subcapitals, right?
well, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, like people complain endlessly about the hack meta, but I mean, the hack meta. It's not that hacks are the best subcaps. It's that they're the most maneuverable and the best chance you have at running away from capitals if you get them dropped on you. Um, so there's a lot of good things going on right now, and I've said this before. The meta is in a better spot than it's been for a long time, but they've stopped short on a few things that they said they were going to iterate on, and they really need to iterate on them. It has been taken forever now. Capitals still mostly work how they the same since the big capital changes when they introduced faxes. There's been some pretty big changes, where they nerfed the EHP of supers and titans. They finally took hauls off of titans, which was one of the big four things I was requesting. But I mean, we've been asking some of these questions for 4 or 5 years now. Like, is it a good idea that you can only kill one fighter at a time? Um,
Mm.
there's there's been people talking about that endlessly, and we still have that same mechanic. Is it, a good idea that super carriers have long range 5.0s that are basically like a battleship in and of itself that can MJD around and all that stuff? So they've made a lot of good changes, but because they haven't kind of gone all the way with some of this stuff, it's still very frustrating. Just in the situations it puts, I would say the majors FCs in, both for attackers and defenders. So yeah,
So
I think there's a lot of lessons to take away from this war, but I would not want to fight. I don't think people want to get in a situation where every major war takes a year.
I
They
think that
never
that's
have
true.
before. They never have before in EVE history. This is the biggest war before this one was the Halloween War, and that only took 6 or 7 months. And by the way, everyone bitched about those mechanics too. So just because a war takes a long time doesn't mean that the mechanics are working. Usually it's the opposite. Usually it means the mechanics aren't working. The Halloween War, people that basically killed both capitals in their current iteration and Dominion South. We basically wiped out that meta after the Halloween War. It was the last war fought like that.
Well, yeah, I mean, BTEC R was a pretty resounding moment in history.
Well, it wasn't that. It was everything before BTEC R. It was the wrecking ball going around for
That's true.
months, and Goon's only counter to it was to waterboard it every day. I mean, there were literally no battles for months. It was just slow catch dropped on an iHub gets repped, carriers get bubbled for 4 or 5 hours. They finally get out and they go home. It was some of the most boring gameplay in EVE history. No one liked it. Everyone complained about it. It lasted for months, and then it eventually all got nerfed and changed.
Okay,
So yeah, I would yeah. To your
what I've
point about the war lasting long, I would say that's not necessarily a resounding endorsement for the mechanics.
that's true. Although I would say that the war hasn't just lasted long, but it's also produced a fair chunk of really high scale battle and a lot of intrigue and had a lot of beats to the war. Unlike previous wars, as you mentioned, the Halloween War was a whole lot of non fighting. The World War B1, I guess, is what we've now started to call it, was effectively a tactical retreat and a smash. Like, this is the first proper war, probably in a very, very long time. So,
There's been a lot of non-fighting in this war. Goons basically didn't fight for 2 months while we killed every keep star outside the 1D keep constellation
I'm not saying
because
that
there
there
was no
hasn't been
point.
non-fighting, but my point is that there has been. Anyway, something that you said was that surprised me was that you commented about the fact that it wasn't good to have all these people piled into one place, and like I was under the understanding that most of the time nullsecers believe that like it's about these big scale fleet fights. So wouldn't that be a positive? What is it? What is your apex level? You're a big block FC. I would have expected you to want more and more numbers, more and more people. You're saying that mechanics that encourage everybody to be in one place aren't good. Help me understand that.
Yeah, man. We love 10% tie-dye. When I look out at all the Eve players out there, they just like give me more 10% tie-dye battles every day if you can. The
Man,
longer the better.
I hate it
That's what
too,
everyone
but that's why I'm not nullsec. But I mean, like,
Yeah.
but what are you imagining as a big block FC? What do you imagine those fights to be like, if not those grand scale hundreds of titans or whatever they end up being?
I mean, yeah, I play in null, well, not hundreds of times, but yeah, I play in nullsec because I want to build a big alliance and have big fights. But I don't. There is a balance to this that is, I think, achievable where it's not required to stuff the entire universe into one region just to because, for instance, keep stars are so difficult to overcome that you kind of have to. Or CCP kind of recognized this. Maybe it wasn't a good idea to let people build titans endlessly, for essentially free on all sides, by the way, not just goons, because titans, and I've said this before, but capital warfare is just a terrible thing to balance around because capital battles are just not complicated or interesting in any way, shape, or form. The ships don't move. It's really obvious who's going to win if one side has more numbers than other. There's really not much you can do about it. If I have 300 Titans and you have 200 Titans, I'm probably going to win. So, the fact that, and this was predicted back in the day, 3 or 4 years ago, when CCP decided that their answer to, super capitals was to let everybody have as many of them as possible, and then it'll balance out and everyone will fight each other. A lot of people said that's probably not going to happen. It's just going to lead to, some pretty stale, super and Titan kind of stalemates, which for the most part has happened. So,
So, but with
yeah,
the
I really think the industry changes that CCP did, while misguided in a lot of ways, like they got to try something, and it's definitely one way to do it. I think it's um, now that everyone already has the Titans, I'm not sure it's going to work. Now it's just going to make it to where everyone who already has them is even more powerful than they already were, and there's no way to catch up. So, the rich get richer kind of thing.
Well, yes
But
and no. The thing is about this is that
yeah.
they needed to do something about the Titan problem, or the Titan and Super problem, as you and I think actually agree with on more than anything else. But the issue is that if you nerf the Titan, then people will feel cheated. If you delete the Titans, then people will absolutely feel cheated. So, like, how do you deal with the situation? And it really looks like CCP has decided to increase their cost to make them basically, even if you do have them, you are reluctant to deploy it so willy nilly because you know that you would have to replace it. And do you
And see, this is such flawed logic, and
okay?
what worries me about CCP is, and because we were here at this point once before,
I agree.
so a lot of people don't understand this about strategic, just this strategic situation. So let's take hypothetical situation here. You've got two alliances facing off against each other in a region. We have jump fatigue, so there's no threat of PL's Titans coming all the way from the north to the south in 30 minutes, like there was 8 or 7 years ago. Um, one side has 100 Titans, and the other side has 20. The guy side with 100 Titans knows this. They know that they have no risk losing the Titans, none whatsoever. There is no amount of cost that will keep them from abusing those Titans endlessly. So you are creating this situation where the side with 20 Titans now has to find a way to execute this perfect trap to get those 100 Titans destroyed, which is way easier said than done. Usually, in past versions of Eve's game mechanics, this situation has usually been impossible. That's why it almost never happened to PL or NC Dot when they had all the Titan advantage for all those years. They never got trapped. Um, so if you're trying to create good gameplay, this is a very bad situation because yes, it would be fucking epic if the side with 20 Titans pulled it off, the miracle. They pulled the perfect trap. They somehow got a bunch of alliances to build secret dreads, and the side with 100 Titans never found out about it, and they did it perfectly. But that's one battle for one day. And the other 3 or 4 or 5 months of that war, that side was getting 100 Titans dropped on them every day, and that's pretty fucking miserable gameplay. So you do not want to create this situation where there's such a disparity in firepower, and cost is a balancing factor. So the more expensive these Titans are, the more risk averse people are going to be, and the side that knows they can get away with it is going to abuse it even more. You do not want to create that disparity. It creates a situation where you're forced to withdraw or come up with the perfect trap, which takes forever, usually doesn't work, usually you can't keep it OPSEC, it's almost impossible to organize, most people won't even try. This is what we had from 2010 to 2015. This is what everyone bitched about when PL and NC Dot dropped Titans on everybody with impunity, and nobody liked it. This is how we got to where we are now, and now we're trying to go back to it. So, like, I don't think this is likely to work.
So, but is the solution to make weaker Titans, or is the solution to give people better trap making devices?
Um,
Because it
that's a
sounds to me like
good
if the
question.
20-man
So,
Titan group had tools to pick at and take chunks out of that 100-man Titan group, then that could actually be an interesting battle. But I don't see any
Yeah,
other
if
way
they
that you
have
could make it
tools, but
fair
you
or make
can't.
it work.
It's very difficult to do that with capital warfare. This is why the disparity works better with subcaps, and subcaps are just generally better.
Right.
The subcap battles are fast, they're mobile, and there's things you can do to make up for inferior firepower, inferior numbers if you've got the skill to do it, and it doesn't take you months to plan. You can import all the ships tomorrow. So with capital warfare, the ships are stationary once they're on the grid for the most part. They don't move. In all the big Titan battles, it's one blob of Titans 200 kilometers from the other blob of Titans, 10% tie-dye. They're just pounding on each other. There's not a whole lot of tactics going on. So, yeah, I don't know what tools you can give. What you can do is you can decrease the firepower disparity between ship classes to where as price increases for more powerful hulls, because this is asymmetric balance, it's not rock, paper, scissors. The advantage you're getting is not equally I don't know if I'm saying this properly, but like the advantage you're getting does not necessarily equal the price jump.
Yeah.
So,
It doesn't scale
right
correctly.
now, yeah, like Dreads and Titans are probably not in a good spot because it takes way more value in Dreads to drop on a Titan and kill it, and you're almost certainly going to lose more Dreads than the Titan you killed, just because of how the prices are adjusting right now. So
Hmm.
you can look at it that way. You can make Titans slightly better than a group that has a lot of dreads and carriers, and obviously this is very vague, but that's one way to look at it. Is you can make Titans way more expensive and they'll give you an edge, but not that much of an edge. Um,
One of- one of the things, if I could
that's
float my
one.
idea
Yeah.
towards you, I'll float an idea towards you since you may be my future CSM representative. So here's my suggestion for fixing Titans, and you can tell me what you think about it. Okay. if if Titans are supposed to be the biggest, coolest thing, they should be like the final boss of your understanding of the game too. And therefore, Titans should test like as many different aspects as you can. So a good Titan pilot, they should have some combat capability, direct combat capability, like maybe a dread, have fighters to manage like a carrier, have reps to use like a fax, and also, and this is the part that's important, like I like the phenomena generator because I like the fact that the Titan changes the nature of the battlefield. A fleet that has a Titan is different than a fleet that doesn't have a Titan. But I think that if they leaned in harder on that phenomena generator and less on the actual combat capabilities of the Titan itself, what'll end up happening is bringing in that first Titan changes the battle. Bringing in a second is a little bit of redundant, and by the time you're bringing in the fifth, you're basically just bringing in a very expensive thing when you really should be bringing in like an extra fax and a dread or something like that. Would that make sense as an idea for like a high level understanding of Titans, or do you have any holes
So
to pick in that?
basically, you wanna make Titans where they don't scale. There's a couple Titans on the field. You're already getting the benefits from them. Bringing any more than that is, just adding redundancy and usually needless redundancy,
Right. If you
right?
put the
Yeah.
functionality, the value of the Titan in its bursts, in its fleet support, then past the first or second, it just becomes like, why didn't you
So
just bring a dread or a fax?
remember how when we started this conversation, you said they don't want to nerf them or they don't want to remove them because then it'll feel cheap to the people who actually worked to get them.
I did say that.
Yeah, that's what you're doing. You're taking them off the battlefield. I mean, like that would be my idea. And I honestly, I mean that would be one of the ways I would approach it. Is you got to get Titans and supers off the battlefield, maybe. But like it's not a bad way. Like that's definitely one way. It would work. It would remove all of that dynamic I just talked about. If having 4 or 5 Titans on the field gave you an advantage, and having any more than that, they're basically command links, right?
Right.
You have some
Exactly.
redundancy, but how much do you really need?
They're super command ships.
Um, yeah, that's one way to approach it. But sides have hundreds and hundreds of Titans. You basically just told a bunch of Titan pilots, sorry, we're removing your Titan from the game. And worst off, we're not giving you a reimbursement. Now you basically have a giant command ship, which your alliance doesn't even need you. And more importantly, they don't even want you on the field because that's just extra risk they don't need.
Right.
So yeah, you're basically deleting Titans from the game in the worst way possible.
So changing their
Um,
value or use won't work. Making them more expensive won't work. If we want to encourage subcapital stuff, is it literally just a projection issue?
I see. I think you go in the opposite direction. I think you're talking about there this in boss. You want to make them do all kinds of cool stuff. I think you narrow their use even more. Um, I think I've talked about this before. I talked about this yesterday on Pando's show. You have to look at all of balance. The way ships work together, the way industry works together, the ways the citadels and Sinojammers and Entosis, it all works together. All of that stuff influences how alliance leaders approach where to put their alliance, how to organize their staff, how to organize their fleets, how to organize their standing fleet, how to organize their crabbing. What should we be training towards? What should we be working for? Should we subsidize Titans because we need more Titans, or should we not? All that stuff. It all plays into each other. So I think the way you approach capitals versus subcapital balance in general is you find a way to reduce the roles. You make them more niche. You make them more specific in what they do so that there are certain situations where having a lot of Titans is useful and you can do some things with them, but they're not the end all be all, which is, we've got some of that already. This is why when we're attacking goons or, when anyone's attacking anyone, they go for the IHUBs. They don't go for the citadels because you don't want to fight on a citadel where enemy Titans can tether. There's already some of that in the game. This is why I say we're not that far off, actually. Um, but I think as a general conceptual way to approach it, capitals are never going to be uh, in, in a great spot versus subcaps unless you really kind of reduce their roles. You still want to make them effective, you still want to make them powerful, you still want people to have a reason to buy them and use them because you can't delete them from the game, but you can limit their capabilities. So we've kind of got some of that. I think we can go further. I've seen some great ideas from people. Actually, I don't know if I want to out him out his idea yet, but I would say the best idea for capital balance, for just balance in general on large scale conflict. Well, I saw last week from Jay Amazingness, the Goon FC. We were discussing in the FC Discord, basically the issues with citadels and carriers and subcaps and all this stuff. And I was throwing out what was my current idea at the time, and he threw out just an idea that was way better than mine. That's why, by the way, the more FC voices on the CSM, the better for this year at least. Sorry to be selfish about it, but that's a good thing. Um, so I'd say there are some things that can be done that would really improve the capital versus subcap dynamic. I want to see subcaps be stronger and more useful. I've always thought the best part of the game was subcaps. And capitals have some interesting things, and they shouldn't be left out of the game. But I don't like this situation where having subcap fleets within range of capitals is basically suicide. It's not a great idea. It was not a great idea a year ago or 2 years ago, and I've basically been saying the same thing for 3 years now. You can even go back through my Reddit post. So it really doesn't have much to do with this war, but this war has definitely taken us to the point where we've seen just about how far these mechanics can go in every edge case imaginable.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, I strongly agree with that. So okay, speaking of the war and your position in it and all this other stuff, like you are the head or one of the top guys of one side of a major conflict who is now running with the primary with your primary position being about balance and about the game mechanics and what is good fair gameplay when it comes to the very gameplay that you participate in, which on the one hand, that your voice is incredibly important to any discussion that is about that. But when it comes to getting people to vote for you, especially people to vote for you outside of your own, block or whatever, which is presumably why you come onto my show and answer these questions, is to reach out to those people. So, like, can you help me understand your methodology to coming to terms with, or like to understanding the balance of the game beyond just your own experience? The concern would be that you're, forest for trees. You're too deep in the trenches to be able to say what good balance is because you're experiencing it. Do you have a method to kind of keep perspective?
I'm not even sure I understand what you're trying to get
Well,
at
like one of
there.
the things you
So,
mentioned was that you were
like
just
I
talking
can't
with
see
an
the big
Imperium
picture
person.
because I'm,
Like, so you talk to other Imperium FCs. So clearly, like, my point is that help. And again, this is just an opportunity to talk about it because I know that this is one of those things that like even came up during the CCP stream, which is the idea of like, if you are going to represent balance, can you explain how you represent true balance and not just promote test alliances methods and suppress other people's methods?
So are you saying that I'm going to go on the CSM and try to enact changes that would help my side win and others lose?
I'm trying to give you. I'm not saying anything. I'm trying to ask you if you what do you do to make sure that you have a good understanding of the balance situation outside of just participating in the fights?
Um, well, first, I would say that I've been on the CSM before and promoted changes that I thought were good for the game and would definitely hurt my alliance in the immediate term. So I do not care if a change hurts or helps my alliance. If you want to look at me in a negative light, you can attribute it to my ego if you want, but I'd rather be right than selfish or than corrupt, I guess. But I want to play a good video game, so you know, if it loses us the war in the short term, I don't really care. If it's a better video game, I'll just, you know, well, it won't be long. We'll be back, and we'll have big fleets, and then the game will be better to play to, because we made good changes to the game. So I don't give a shit about promoting my own side, as ridiculous as that would be. And I don't think any CSM member would do that. I don't think the Goon FCs do that. I don't think Philly did that. I don't think there's ever been a CSM member who's gotten on there and so selfishly promoted their own stuff. But I'm sure there's some random people out there who like to think that, so whatever. But as far as am I too into it to see the bigger picture? I would say I don't have too much perspective on what would be good for wormholes right now because I haven't played in wormholes. But no, I am not too deep into nullsec to be unable to see the forest for the trees. I think I actually have a pretty good conceptual understanding of everything that goes into nullsec warfare and building an alliance because I've done it all and done it for a while and seen multiple iterations of it over the years from CCP.
Really appreciate it. And I didn't mean to come across as being
You weren't.
antagonistic.
The chat was, and I wanted to make sure
That's
they knew.
fair. Yeah, and the chat can. I don't include the chat in the final broadcast, so they can do
No, don't
whatever
worry
they
about
want.
it. He
Uh,
totally has no idea what he's talking about.
it's fine. No, but I appreciate you digging into that with me because it is something like I like to bring up those kinds of things so that way we can talk about them, address them, even if they do seem almost like a ridiculous accusation. Although I will say that I think I can probably find a couple of examples of the past in which there have at least been accusations of CSM members uh, pressing changes that were incredibly one-sided. But that wasn't you, and that wasn't now. So it is. So what I'm hearing though is that you've been doing this for a long time, and that you've gone through a lot of different iterations of stuff. So it isn't about like any one thing. Whatever happens to be the best thing, you're going to do it because that's what you do as a leader of a military force in this kind of game. But separate from that, you can say these things are bullshit and these things are not. And if these bullshit things were less, then these other tactics, these are the tactics that I want to use. These are the tactics that I legitimately think would be fun and that, have proven out in the past as being fun. But I feel like they're being suppressed by these other things. So help me address these other things so that way we can have the best fleet battles that we can. Is that pretty much what I'm hearing?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I think that we're not actually that far off, but very minor tweaks can have such an impact on the meta. There are a lot of situations where some subcap fleet doctrine is the OP doctrine of the time, and one minor little tweak to it all of a sudden makes it not worth it to bring, and or puts it in a position where now there's a rock paper scissors balance almost, which has happened before in Eve. It just because there are pain points right now, and it's frustrating at times, and I'm saying there's a lot of things that are not good gameplay, doesn't mean that it requires massive revamping of the entire game. There are minor tweaks that can be made that would be pretty substantial to um, how tactically, fleets approach a battle on a Citadel grid or an iHub grid or, at a gate or in any situation really. So, um, yeah.
Okay. Um, Actually, Chappie in chat does ask an interesting question, which I do want to bring up as I get close to the end of my time. But why don't you dig in a little bit more about the industry changes, your feelings about them, and do you feel like they are overall successful? How do you feel they help the industrial player?
Um, yeah, I mean, as far as the industry changes go, I adding, changing the materials used and making it more complex. It's definitely disruptive. I've seen some arguments that it only helps the power industry players, the people running, big setups with tons of accounts, or maybe corporations with, mega industry dudes who are all power gamers essentially,
I
where
feel
it
like they would be the
kind of.
most disrupted, wouldn't they?
Yeah, but I've seen some arguments where these new changes just make it easier for them to dominate, and it makes it harder for more casual or lighter players to get into it. I don't know if that's true, because as a major 0-0 alliance, we really only have power industry players. But
That's fair.
yeah, but it's definitely something that would be concerning. It certainly seems like complexity just for complexity's sake is not always a good thing. And if that's what we're getting here, that's something that would be concerning. Um, I would say that this idea that they needed to bleed the players of their accumulated wealth before they could introduce the game mechanics they wanted to introduce is kind of ridiculous. That was the one thing that really frustrated me. It seems like CCP has gotten in their head that the players are the enemy sometimes, and that can never be true. And it's this idea that we have to punish you before we can help you is I can't believe that would be a major game trying to make a profit, that their approach to the game to balance.
But
I don't
isn't
think
one
that was a good way to do it. I think, yes, if they made industry changes, there would be people with accumulated wealth who got to benefit from it, but it would eventually balance out in time. And I mean, this whole scarcity thing where they're going to bleed us of our wealth. All the big people who had the most wealth, they're still benefiting from it. Like they're still it just created a rich get richer situation anyway. So I don't really think it did anything other than piss a lot of people off. So I get why they did it. I understand the logic. I just don't understand. I don't agree with the reasoning. I don't agree with it.
Solid answer. 10-minute warning. So, do you have anything that I may have not covered, or anything that you want to drill in on?
Um, let me think here. I mean, I'll just keep since I'm kind of not, I wouldn't say a single issue candidate, but mainly going for one thing here.
Focused candidate. We like to call it a focused
Yeah,
candidate around here.
yeah, there we go. So, I want to get this game to a point where, I'm kind of unique in this. I know a lot of people don't think this, but I actually don't think Eve needs to be harsher or more complex. It is plenty harsh and complex enough. It is no longer going to cease being hardcore or the most, competitive and intense gaming experience out there if we dumb it down just a little bit. I work, I try to have a social life, and I play Eve as a hobby. And if I'm one of the content creators out here saying that this game should feel a little less like work and a little more fun, um, and I know I'm not the only content creator who thinks like that. It's probably something to consider. Um, I think we should spend, we could have some battles that are more engaging. We can still leave defenders in a situation where they can defend, and attackers in a situation where they can attack. I love that it took us this long to get through Goon Space. I think the fact that defenders have advantages now, and if I can shit talk the goons in chat here, let's be honest, the game mechanics are really the only reason you still have your space. It's all the same players from 2016, but back when it was just in Tosasolv, you guys lost in a month. So I like that we didn't just wipe goons off the map in a month this time. That war was such a blue balls experience. I mean, we didn't even really get into it. So it's a good thing that it took this long. It's a good thing that defenders can hunker down and punch above their weight. But it's there's some dynamics here, some strategic dynamics that lead to some pretty poor uh, best practices for attacking and defending fleets. I'd rather see fleets fighting each other, not running from each other. I'd rather see battles that are predictable and easier for people who have a real life to show up for, rather than this
Incentivize good
24/7
behavior,
flash
not
form
bad
game.
behavior, basically.
Yeah,
Yeah.
essentially. Yeah, I want to see wars come down to fights on the battlefield, not morale attrition, essentially. And I know Eve's been like that for the most part, but I don't think it has to be there. I think we're pretty close to a dynamic where the attackers can attack and the defenders can defend, and if neither one of them want to commit, they'll take some light losses, and they won't make too much progress here or there, but they'll at least be able to fight each other. So uh, I think we can get these mechanics in a better spot than what they are, and I haven't given too many specific details because mainly, I don't want to out Jay's idea,
That's fair. Well,
because Jay's idea is really fucking good. But it's detrimental to Goons, so I don't want to out him like that. But
I will say,
yeah,
I will say, normally, like, I'm one of the questions I ask is like, well, why would people outside of your side, support you? How, can you have convince, the other side that you could represent them too? I think you're the first candidate to actually do shots fired in the middle of my stream. So bold move, Cotton. We'll see how it works out for you. I'm
well, I mean, I don't think too many Goons are undecided voters here.
that's
But
I mean, it's a solid point. Like it's it says something about you represent who you represent, and that's absolutely good. You're not pandering. You're not trying to convince people that you aren't who you are. You are who you are,
well,
and I
I wouldn't
appreciate
say it
that.
like that. The Goons don't know this, but I represent them too. I represent a more fun nullsec, and when they're knocked down to size after this war, and we fulfill our goals of making them a little less relevant than they are, they'll actually enjoy this new nullsec that we've built for them. So I want good game mechanics that both goons and test pilots will enjoy.
All right. And then, so one of the things is that, like, in the last year, or especially just prior to the war, we got a lot of asking for content conflict generators by CCP. There wasn't enough conflict generators. We also see things like the drifter attacks that ended up being a big problem and resulted in cries of non-consensual PvE. But meanwhile, with things like invasions and with the events that have been going on, CCP's shown that they can create much more interesting PvE dynamics, PvE mechanics, and PvP PvE encounters. What do you feel is the role of PvE in making nullsec this more fun universe of yours?
This idea of content driver or conflict generators is ridiculous, and this is why I think it's important to have people who've actually, from the beginning, said, "Let's go to war with those people." Um, Occasionally, we do it for more resources. Mostly, we do it because we want to kill each other. And what generates conflict is the idea that we might be able to actually win that war. And so, if a target is unassailable or it's too risky to go to war because you could lose everything that you built up and all this stuff, then people don't do it. If the target is tough but a manageable risk and it would be fun and not painful as fuck, um, then people will go to war. And I have the perfect example for you to illustrate this concept. Everyone knows that the TTT makes a ton of money, but no one wants to fight for extra control over it or any control over it. Why? Because it's fucking miserable. It's the worst content in the game. It's fucking terrible.
Right.
So, no, this idea that adding conflict generators, these things that make you ISK, but having them be unbelievably terrible or frustrating to fight over is going to still make people want to go to war is ridiculous. People go to war because it's fun, because the game is fun to play. Battles are fun, kicking your enemy's ass is fun, and playing miserable gameplay, being stuck in shitty gameplay, is not something anyone wants to do, no matter how much ISK it makes them.
Right. But also, what about not just the ISK part of it, but you live in a living universe. Recently, the rats got changed because of the belts and officers and all that stuff. So now there's a bunch of rats on the gates, which has, again, caused a lot of null blocks and nullsecers to cry out against non-consensual PvEs. And admittedly, a bunch of roaming people into nullsec. So, like, not just null blocks. But either way, my point is, are you on the side of no non-consensual PvE, or do you feel like the universe should be its own challenge?
I, Non-consensual PvE, pacifists, activists. There's room for both. I think, I think Eve PvE in general is pretty unengaging. So I'm probably not the best person to ask about that, but plenty of people like to do it. I think there's room for both pacifists and activists. I think there should be more passive ISK generators. I think that actually, um, having alliances actually give a shit about defending some of this stuff is interesting, and more importantly, it makes a space. Well, depending on how you organize it, it could be a little more dynamic, but that's more of a details thing. But I don't think there's too big of a deal whether you lean too heavy towards passive or too heavy towards active, as long as the content's engaging and the warfare is engaging. People will fight each other for sure.
All right. Well, it's good. Some good insight. I think that is about the time. So, any final thoughts?
Yeah, yeah. Goonies in chat, try not to be so butt flustered. You know, you'll still be here. You'll just be less relevant. It's all good.
As we get closer and closer to the end of the election time, I've noticed that across the board, there's just been a lot more activity in all of the chats. Engagement is good. That's
Well,
all I
you
know.
know, Goons, I mean, some would call it unbecoming, but yeah, Goons have been going after the people some of these CSM candidates and kind of shitting up chat, and yeah, it's fine. It is what it is. I don't mind it.
It's been an interesting CSM campaign, but anywho, I appreciate you coming on and talking. Oh shoot, I appreciate you coming on and talking, and I think that obviously it's almost moot for me to try to like lay out why you would make a good candidate. You're a very experienced FC. You bring a lot to the table, especially for your group, which has its own is a large organization, and so I look forward to seeing your progress on during the election. And if you get on the CSM, I think that you bring a lot to the table to help CCP make good decisions about these kinds of things. And the good news is, to go back a little bit to what we were saying before, or going back what we were saying earlier, like even if one was to think that your perspective is one-sided, like that's still super good. Like somebody who's able to be there in the room, as I always say, when the doors are closed and the NDA, all that stuff, having the person in the room that can articulate their position clearly, regardless of whether or not you agree with it, the mere act of him explaining all of this helps us dig through the pieces and understand things on a much more complex level. And so to that end, yeah, absolutely. I think that you'd be incredibly valuable in the CSM, and this has been a very enlightening and informative conversation. I appreciate you answering my questions.
Yeah, man. This was great. Thanks for having me. Thanks for all the compliments. Definitely will try to live up to all of them if I do get on, and I hope I get on. It's not a sure thing. But yeah, I will do my best, and thanks for all those kind words.
Absolutely. And good luck with the CSM, good luck with the warg, and look forward to see what else you do.
Yeah, you too, man. Thanks for having me.
All right. 07.